In the heart of Istanbul, beneath layers of time and interpretation, lies a question that has echoed through centuries. The divine algorithm seeks those who dare to question the path between sacred tradition and mystical transcendence. Here, where East meets West, whispers of ancient wisdom challenge modern understanding. Sarah had always known the difference between scholarship and heresy. Yet here she sat, surrounded by texts that spoke of unity beyond division, of love transcending law. The manuscript before her bore Rumi's words, but also questions that official doctrine never asked. Her pen trembled as she translated the forbidden passages. The mosque had witnessed countless prayers, each one a thread in humanity's tapestry of faith. But tonight, Sarah's presence felt different. She carried knowledge that could unravel carefully constructed certainties. The Imam's sermon echoed through marble halls, speaking of submission, while her heart beat to rhythms of inquiry. The Quran spoke clearly of guidance, yet mystics like Rumi found meanings that danced between the lines. Sarah's finger traced verses about divine mercy while her mind wrestled with implications. Was the Sufi path an expansion of revelation or a deviation that led souls astray? The answer mattered more than she dared admit. Istanbul lived at the crossroads of worlds, where ancient faith met modern doubt. Sarah stood between the mosque's towering minarets and the city's relentless march forward. In her hands rested centuries of mystical tradition, in her heart burned questions that could not be silenced. The weight of choice pressed upon her shoulders like evening shadows. The tears came not from sadness but from the terrible beauty of truth. Each drop that fell upon the manuscript seemed to wash away another layer of certainty. Rumi had found God in wine and dance, in poetry that spoke what doctrine could not. Sarah wondered if her own heart was large enough to hold such contradictions without breaking. The library existed in whispers, a sanctuary for those who sought answers beyond approved narratives. Here, Sufi poetry shared shelves with orthodox theology, each text claiming divine authority. Sarah pulled volumes that bore the scent of controversy, their pages heavy with the dreams of mystics who had dared to glimpse the unseeable. The sheikh had waited decades for someone worthy of the conversation. His eyes held oceans of unspoken truths, his silence speaking louder than volumes of debate. When Sarah finally found him in the garden where roses bloomed despite winter, he simply nodded as if her questions had already been answered in the space between heartbeats. The strait carried ships between continents, each vessel bearing stories of faith and doubt. From its waters rose the call to prayer that had echoed for 1,000 years, while in hidden rooms scholars debated meanings that could reshape understanding. Sarah felt herself becoming part of something larger than her own trembling courage. The compass spun like her soul, pulled by forces she could not name. North pointed toward tradition, south toward innovation, east toward mysticism, west toward rationalism. Rumi's tomb lay in Turkey, yet his words lived in hearts that had never seen his resting place. Sarah closed her eyes and let the divine algorithm choose her path. Sarah felt the weight of centuries pressing against her chest. The sheikh's words lingered like incense, each phrase a door she had yet to open. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, hiding secrets in its sands. She knew the path forward was not written in books, but in choices that would echo beyond her lifetime. The horizon shimmered with heat and possibility, pulling her toward a destiny she could sense but not yet name. In the silence of the library, Sarah traced her fingers across texts written in languages she barely understood. Each manuscript was a thread in a tapestry too vast to comprehend. The sheikh had left her here not to study, but to listen. Beyond the words, beyond the letters, something stirred. A truth that lived in the space between ink and paper, waiting for her to breathe life into it. The sheikh appeared as if from the night itself, his presence calm, inevitable. He spoke of journeys that began in stillness and ended in surrender. Sarah listened, her heart beating in rhythm with the fountain's gentle splash. Time bent around them, and she realized that every step she had taken until now had been preparation for this moment, this place where silence spoke louder than revelation. The strait had grown violent, its waters reflecting the turmoil within her. Sarah stood at the bow of the boat, rain soaking through her clothes, her eyes fixed on the distant shore. The sheikh's voice echoed in the wind, speaking of faith not as certainty, but as a leap into the unknown. She understood now that the compass had never been meant to guide her to a destination, but to teach her how to trust the journey. Alone in the chamber, Sarah knelt not in worship, but in surrender. The questions that had driven her for so long now fell away like leaves in autumn. She no longer sought answers, but presence. The sheikh had shown her that wisdom was not in knowing, but in being. Outside, the stars moved in their ancient dance, indifferent to her struggle, yet somehow part of it. The path ahead was uncertain, carved by those who had walked it before her. Sarah's footsteps echoed against the stone, each one a declaration of intent. The sheikh had given her no map, only a name whispered in the dark. Rumi. The poet who had danced with the divine, whose words had crossed borders and beliefs. She would find his resting place, not to worship, but to understand what it meant to live beyond the self. The city pulsed with voices, each one carrying a story, a prayer, a plea. Sarah moved through the crowd like a ghost, unseen but not alone. The sheikh's words returned to her in fragments, spoken in the rhythm of the market. Truth, he had said, was not hidden in temples or tombs, but in the hearts of those who dared to seek it. She watched a child laugh, a merchant weep, a mother embrace her son, and saw in them the face of the divine. The caravan moved like a caravan of dreams, each rider carrying burdens unseen. Sarah rode among them, not as a traveler, but as a seeker. The sheikh had told her that the journey was not about arriving, but about becoming. The desert stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, yet filled with a strange beauty. She closed her eyes and let the rhythm of the camels guide her deeper into the mystery. The mosque stood in silence, its walls cracked but not fallen. Sarah knelt among the ruins, her hands pressed to the earth. The sheikh had said that all things broken could still hold light. Above her, the stars shone with the indifference of eternity, yet she felt their gaze as if they were watching over her. The light in the distance was not a beacon, but a reminder that even in ruin, something holy could remain. Rumi's tomb was not what she had imagined. No grand structure, no crowds of pilgrims, only wildflowers and wind. Sarah stood before it, her breath caught in her throat. The sheikh had brought her here not to find answers, but to ask the right questions. She whispered his name into the silence, and for a moment, the world held its breath. The journey was not over, but it had finally begun. She whispered his words into the silence, not knowing if they would return as wisdom or echo. The sheikh had left her here with nothing but questions that refused to fade. In the distance, the caravan's fires flickered like memories she could no longer hold. The journal was not hers, yet it felt familiar. Fragments of poems, half-finished thoughts, lines that seemed to respond to her doubts. Each page turned was a step deeper into a mind she had never known but somehow recognized. The sun rose without ceremony, burning away the cool comfort of night. Sarah walked toward the caravan, her footsteps leaving marks that the wind would soon erase. She carried no bag, no map, only the weight of choices made in solitude. He did not rise to greet her, nor did he speak. The fire cracked between them like old bones. Sarah stopped just beyond its warmth, waiting for a sign that he might not give. His silence was heavier than any sermon. "Tell me why you brought me here," she said, and he smiled as if the question itself was the answer. "You came because you were already here," he replied. The journey was never about distance, but about dissolving the illusion of separation. "This compass does not point north," he said, placing it in her palm. "It points to where you have always been." She stared at it, the needle trembling before settling on a direction that made no sense. Her heart beat faster, though she could not say why. The dunes rose and fell like breath, and she followed the compass into a valley she did not remember passing through before. The air shimmered with heat, but she felt only a strange coolness, as if the land itself was guiding her forward. She knelt and touched the ground, expecting warmth but finding coolness. The sand shimmered beneath her fingers, revealing images that flickered and vanished. Faces, places, lives she had never lived but somehow remembered. The sheikh's voice echoed without sound. The earth opened before her not as a threat, but as an invitation. She stepped forward without fear, her body dissolving into light. The compass fell from her hand, spinning slowly as it disappeared into the void she had always mistaken for absence. In the silence between heartbeats, she heard the truth. Not spoken, not written, but felt in every fiber of her being. The sheik had not led her to a place, but to the space between places. The journey had never been about arriving. It was about becoming nothing. Time unraveled here, showing her all the paths not taken. She saw herself as child, as mother, as stranger in lands she had never walked. Each vision pulled at her, whispering of lives just out of reach. The sheik remained still, his presence both anchor and storm. Her eyes became mirrors, reflecting chaos and beauty in equal measure. Faces of lovers, enemies, friends long gone flickered across her gaze. She felt their joy, their pain, their final breaths. The weight of unlived lives pressed against her chest, slowing her breath. He raised his hand not to command, but to release. The cosmos bent around his gesture, stars aligning in patterns older than language. She understood then that he was not her guide, but her gatekeeper. Every step with him had been a choice she didn't know she was making. Her body no longer belonged to her. It flowed like water, golden streams threading through her form, linking her to the endless dark. She was no longer searching for answers. She was becoming the question itself. The silence grew louder, drowning out even her thoughts. A child's laughter echoed in the void, sharp and real. She saw herself, small and wild-haired, racing through dusk-lit alleys. The sheik stood there even then, watching, waiting. How many times had he stood in that exact spot? How many lives had he witnessed begin and end? The compass shattered, its pieces scattering like fallen stars. Each fragment spun wildly, pointing not north, but to every direction at once. She had carried it for so long, believing it would lead her home. Now she saw it had been leading her away from herself. His hand trembled, just once. She saw it, that small crack in his stillness. Grief flickered across his features, old and deep. He had brought others here before. How many had been lost to the in-between? How many had chosen a path that led to nothing? She reached for him, her arm bending through space like light through glass. Their fingers almost touched, and in that almost, she felt it all. The pull of return, the lure of forgetting, the sharp edge of what it meant to know too much. One touch and she could go back. Two paths bloomed before her, vivid and alive. One led to light, to voices, to the warmth of belonging. The other curved into shadow, where silence waited like an old friend. Both called her name. Both promised an end to the endlessness. Both asked for everything. She hovered at the edge of decision, her form flickering like a dying star. Behind the sheik's eyes, she glimpsed another choice, made long ago. He had stood where she stood, faced what she now faced. And he had chosen to remain, to watch, to wait. For her. She stepped back, her breath catching. Not forward, but inward. The choice was never about where to go, but who to become. She saw that now. The sheik had not stayed out of fear or duty. He had stayed to hold the balance, to keep the worlds from tilting too far. In his youth, he had nearly touched the shadow, nearly let it claim him. But someone had called him back. A voice. A name. Hers. He had not known then that she would one day stand where he once stood, facing the same silence, the same choice. She reached toward the shadow, not to take its hand, but to release it. Her fingers unfurled, and from them poured all she had carried. The weight of knowing, the ache of memory, the fear of forgetting. Each thread of light carried a truth she no longer needed to hold. The path to light was not behind her, nor ahead. It was beneath her feet. She walked away from both paths, toward the place where earth met sky, where breath met silence, where she might finally rest. Not as a keeper, not as a lost soul, but as herself. He felt it then, the shift. Not a return, but a release. She had not come back to him. She had come back to herself. And in that, she had given him the same. The waiting was over. The balance was restored. The story was complete.